Renee,
I love that.
do you know how hard it is to not make a peep when that crazy music starts? I'm like dying. I'm like, Melody, could you pick a better song?
I love it. I love how I look in that cartoon. I'm like, who's that girl?
I love how I'm like hitting you on the head. Hey everyone, welcome to Kitchen Party. This is season 3. Woo! Can we get a woo woo?
Whoop, whoop.
Woo woo woo! I love how we started with 4 hosts and now we're down to 2.
Uh-oh.
I know, but we're gonna this season we're actually
over my shoulder.
we're changing it up this season. Not only are we going to have a whole bunch of guest co-hosts coming on, but we're also going to be inviting a lot of the food bloggers that we work with all year long, who are experts in certain things like ingredients and cookbooks and writing and blogging and all that kind of stuff. They're going to be in the house with us all season long. So make sure you tune in every Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. My name is Babette Pepai. I'm the founder of BakeSpace.com. I'm one of the co-hosts of Kitchen Party. Renee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Renee Lynch. I'm a writer and editor with the LA Times, and I work across a number of feature sections, including food and health, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yay! We took the whole summer off.
Yes, we did. Because some of us had something big going on. What was that?
I don't know. I want to make sure that Melody does not have, because I'm seeing Renee as the big picture the whole time. I'm telling our producer, in case you have you have Renee highlighted. Also, Renee.
The whole time? What's wrong with that?
Renee, you remember to put your lower third.
Yes, I did.
We're totally rusty, but we're going to make this one of the greatest shows of season 3, for sure. I have tried canning. Renee, have you tried canning before? Or preserving food?
I did not can until Cathy got me doing some canning. So I look forward to telling you a little bit about that during the show.
Very interesting. If you are interested in canning or preserving, especially year-round, we're not just talking about like summer, fall, winter. We're talking about how to look at ingredients and look at your farmer's market as a opportunity to not just find you're going to make on your plate this week, but also how to have ingredients all year round. We've had Cathy Barrow on the show about a year ago. I think it was September of 2013, the last time we had her on, and we thought, this is a great time to bring her back to talk about her new cookbook that she just published. Now, Cathy, do you want to tell us a little bit about your blog, and do you want to tell us about the cookbook, and when did the cookbook come out?
Well, the cookbook came out on Monday.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, 3 days ago. I know it's been a very exciting week. It's called Mrs. Wheelbarrow's Practical Pantry. And that is my name. It's Mrs. Wheelbarrow because I used to have a landscaping business and because I married Dennis Barrow. So, it all kind of works out. And in the meantime, I've had a blog, Mrs. Wheelbarrow's Kitchen, for, I guess, 5.5 years now. And I've just taken a lot of what I learned writing the blog and listening to my readers and getting their comments and seeing how interested they were in preservation. And I put together this book that covers canning and pressure canning and smoking and charcuterie and curing meats and making cheese. So it's sort of the whole thing on preserving.
What was that process like writing the book?
Oh, wow, it was really hard. It was no problem. I just got up, I typed a little bit, it was done. It was really hard because it's more than just writing. You have to organize so many things. I had to organize what I was going to shop for and when I was going to cook and who was going to recipe test. And, even just developing one recipe might be 5 or 8 or 10 times till I got to what I liked. And then I would make it 2 or 3 more times until I was sure it was perfect. So it was a lot of food. Had a lot of friends over. Ate a lot of food. It was fun though. It was really fun. It was challenging and exciting.
Now, how did you decide to go from? How did you decide which recipes you were going to put in the cookbook? Were you not able to just take them from the blog, or did you kind of have a commitment to doing a bunch of new recipes? How did that work?
I made a commitment to do as many new recipes as possible. I think there are only 5 or 6 recipes that have been on my blog exactly in the same form out of 135. So I just felt that I'd already published those and I wanted new recipes for my book.
Oh, Renee, I'm sorry. Renee, I'm going to cut you off. I'm sorry. I just want to let the folks who are watching at home, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Twitter, you're watching wherever we posted the link on BakeSpace.com, what you can do if you want to chat with us is you can either go to our Google event page, which is where also we're broadcasting live from this Hangout, and also on Twitter, you can use the hashtag KitchenParty, all one word, and you can ask Cathy questions. So if you this is part of how this show works. It's not just us asking questions and Cathy telling us about the book, but it's also about making sure this chat is valuable to you. So if you have questions about canning, or if there's anything that Cathy has inspired, or if you want to just chime in and just say hi to Cathy, please make sure you use the hashtag so we can follow along, and then we can tell her live on the show and get your questions answered, because I'm sure if you're thinking of the questions, lots of people are thinking of the questions. So Renee, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just heard like a weird sound. I thought my sound went out, but Cathy, could we maybe kind of go back in time a little bit? How did this all start? It seems like you're having a fantastic week with your book coming out now, but maybe we could go back to when the concept of a book wasn't even in the back of your mind, much less at the forefront. How did this all get started for you, and why canning as opposed to something else?
Well, I think the whole writing thing started as kind of an accident. I had a landscape business that was thriving and really wonderful, and in 2008, when the economy made some big changes, so did my landscape business. Like, it went from being pretty good to being non-existent. And I was, at the time, in a women's group, and I was really lost. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself, and they all suggested that I start teaching classes. To which I responded, sure, yeah, but how would anybody find out about them? They said, well, have you heard about something called a blog? And literally, until that moment, I had never heard of a blog. So I did a little research, and I got some help technically, and I started the blog. And I was really looking for, I guess I was looking for a niche. I was looking for some area that I could specialize in, because that was what made the most sense for the blogs that I did read. The ones that I loved, they had something that was special that they could offer. And it became clear to me that this canning thing that I've been doing forever was something that many people didn't know. And so that's how it organically grew.
When did you tell us about your canning history? Was that something that you learned from a parent or relative, yes, or how did that start?
I remember canning with my great-grandmother when I was about 5 years old. That summer, my mother sent me to her every morning, and my mother was getting a PhD, and I know now because she was writing why she wanted to get rid of 5-year-old me. So I became my great-grandmother's kitchen slave for the summer, and it would, and we canned everything, beans and peaches and cherries and strawberries, and I really have a very distinct memory of that summer, and like cleaning and cutting a lot of vegetables and fruit all summer long. So,
now, do you have a fond memory of that, or is that like a, was it?
I do. I have a really fond memory. She was a slave driver. It was not uncommon for her to say, I have to make 500 rugula for the sisterhood. Let's start. So she was very involved in the temple. I was rolling out rugula. I was sewing aprons for the gift shop. I was crocheting pot holders. Gee, I was working all summer.
Wow. Where was this in the country?
In Ohio.
In Ohio. So the summers are pretty hot in Ohio, so hopefully you had air conditioning.
I don't think we did. But so I have all that sort of deep memory of canning. And then back in the 80s, my mother took it up, and I remember doing it with her in sort of a hobby way. So my great-grandmother did it because it's actually what she ate in the winter. My mother liked the idea of having some pretty jam to give as Christmas presents. And then, I had canned always. There are a couple of recipes that I couldn't live without. One being my mother's mango chutney, which I made every year, for 30 or 35 years before I ever started blogging. And a couple of jams that I just always felt I wanted those in my house, so I canned them. But taking on this sort of bigger picture canning, trying to replicate a grocery store in my own home, that started about 5 years ago. I wanted to be able to eat local food year-round, and you can't do that except in Southern California.
You know, when we first launched this this Google Hangout on our event page on Google Plus, I just want to give a shout out to Laura. I think it's Kumin is her last name, and she said that Cathy is my go-to authority for all things canning and preserving. Her book is absolutely a fabulous guide for anyone who wants to can, preserve, or get more creative in either one of these realms. So you're.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, you know, you have a huge fan base, and you have people who are tuning in, and I forgot to turn my phone off, so we're going to forget that, whoever's calling. I'm very popular today, and
Your husband, he wants to know what's for dinner.
exactly. For those of you who are just watching Kitchen Party, I did get married, which I'm very excited about. But let's talk about if I'm new, and I'm going to start with, because I tried strawberry preserve. Like I tried to actually make strawberry jam. Was that the best thing to start with, or should I have started with something a little bit easier?
Strawberries are challenging, and everybody starts with that. You know, it's the beginning of the season, and you see those strawberries, and it's so exciting, and you have strawberry jam. And it's one of the lower pectin fruits, so it's very hard to get it to set. Most people end up with really runny jam, or with the strawberries all floating on the top and the jelly part below. So I'd say don't start with strawberry. Start with raspberry. You can't go wrong with raspberry. It's the easiest jam in the world.
Well, that's interesting. Renee, we've been doing it wrong the whole time.
Yeah, I know. That is fascinating. I notice sometimes you'll see a berry, like a strawberry jam, and there's almost a quality to it that it almost looks like almost like a gem or a jewel, where it's colored, but there's also this kind of clarity to it. And I'm like, what is the trick for doing that? Because I think when you say people start out with strawberry, I think that's what we're looking for. It's like kind of like the holy grail of something that's gorgeous that you could give and have on a shelf. But
Right.
When I have tried it, it has not looked like that.
Me too.
But I have to say, I have not tried one of your recipes for that, Cathy.
There's a science to it, and to make it very, very simple, what we need to do to preserve any food is change the water content in that food. The water is what is going to turn something bad. You know, every cell is made up of a certain percentage of water. When you make jam, what you want to do is take the cells in the fruit and replace that water with a sugar syrup. So if you just think that, you're doing that osmosis thing. So you need to boil off all the water, and that's the foam and the big bubbles that occur when you're making jam. Sometimes, if you're working with fruit that's too large, boiling off that water will turn the fruit into little rubbery bits. So it has to do with making sure that you cut them a good size so that the water can come out before it dehydrates completely and get rehydrated with that sugar syrup.
What is a good size?
Well, I like it to be about the size of your little pinky. You know, that's a good size to start with. But it's that water content that is always going to be the challenge in any preserving recipe. And that clear gel, you're right, that's the holy grail. It's what everybody wants. And the recipes that I have in my book, they don't use pectin, and they work with that clear gel in a kind of candy-making way. So you're turning it into almost a candy in which the fruit is floating. And that's how you can get that clear gel.
Ooh. Now, did I hear you correctly? You said you do not use pectin.
I do not use pectin.
Now, why is that? Because that seems like a staple for a lot of canning recipes.
If you go back to Escoffier and his cookbook, he's the first one who said, you know, that you can make it with just sugar and lemon juice. All fruit has natural pectin, and it gets activated with sugar and lemon juice. And Escoffier developed this method of macerating the fruit in sugar and lemon juice for a long time. The syrup comes out during that maceration. Then you make the syrup boil up to that candy-making stage of 220 degrees. And when you add the fruit back in, the syrup infuses the fruit, the water boils out, and you have jelly. or jam, and you don't need the pectin. Pectin is a very American product, and there are European versions of it, but the American classic pectin that we see in the boxes or the liquid packets, what my issue with them is that they require a pound of fruit and a pound of sugar to activate, and I think that's too much sugar. And most of them are scaled for large quantities, like 8 or 10 jars of jam, and I think that's too many. So my recipes are scaled for 3 or 4 jars and use no pectin.
That
That's
also
really
seems like a more
interesting.
manageable amount for somebody who's trying to can, because you kind of feel like, well, if I can something, I'm going to be eating it for the next 17 years.
Right.
Right?
But if you make 4 jars of jam, here's my theory. You eat one right away because you're so proud of it you have to. You put one away for later, you give one to your friend, and you save one for Christmas. So there you are. Or you get to Christmas and you think, I'm not giving that to anybody. That was really good.
What are the best jars for because I'll go to the store or I'll go to Michael's or something like that, and I'll see like, oh, like a box of jars. Is there like one brand that you prefer, or is there one type of lid that you prefer? Because I was trying to do some research before the show, and it's like, I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother would have like the ring and then the top thing, and then I don't know. What do you use?
Well, the familiar American brand of jar is the ball jar, or the mason jar. And actually, they were 2 different companies for a long time, the ball jar company and the mason jar company. And they all got smushed together, and there's a company called Jardin Home Products, and they make all of those jars now in America. And I use those because they're relatively inexpensive, they're sturdy, the openings are consistent. There's a regular opening and a wide opening, the flat lid and the ring. And those lids fit jars. I have jars from the 20s and jars from the 30s that I like to use sometimes for just a beautiful, photo shoot. And they still have the same size opening as the ones that are being used now. So there's this great consistency. There are a lot of beautiful, beautiful European jars. Quattro Formaggio, which is the Italian, Weck, which is a German company, Kilner, which is from the UK. And they're all really pretty. They're expensive, and they're a little bit trickier to use. So I recommend the good old American ball jars, which you can find usually at junk shops, Salvation Army, garage sales, in your aunt's attic. I mean, it's just they're everywhere.
I love that the tops are interchangeable. I hate when you get something and you're like, I can never close this again if I lose this top. It'll be over. Because I have like the tiny little jars. Because I had this fantasy for Christmas one year that I was going to make jam for everyone and make these cute little jars. And so they're just basically sitting in a box in my kitchen, like doing nothing for nobody at all. I'm going to try the raspberry. Would you say besides raspberry, because I know raspberry is like the go-to fruit if you want to start, what is your favorite food or ingredient to can or preserve?
I've been asked this question many times, and I give the same answer. I really can't pick a favorite because I'm so fickle that it's whatever is in front of me today. Like, I'm really loving cranberries right now. Just started today. I started making some cranberries. Boy, they taste great. Last week it was pears. Next week it could be oysters. I'm fickle. I'm fickle.
How do you make the cranberries not so sour? Or do you like them sour? What's the...
Oh, well, I blend raspberry in, actually. It's 2 parts cranberry, 1 part raspberry, which gives it a little bit of sweet. And it does have sugar in it, of course, and lemon juice and some orange zest. It's delicious.
Ooh, that sounds good. Now, is that what you would serve at a holiday table, like for Thanksgiving?
It is. And I'm going to be making some rugelach with that inside. Cookie.
Ooh, that would be really good. Would you for an application like that with a cookie, would you make it less sweet, or is that sweet?
No, I pull any jam off of the shelf to make rugelach. The rugelach recipe is in the book. I mean, one of the things I'm proudest about is that there are 35 recipes in the book using the foods that are canned. So there's that rugelach recipe. There's a barbecue sauce recipe that uses strawberry jam. There's a lot of recipes for smoked turkey and pasta. There's a recipe for ricotta pie. So, there are a lot of different things.
I can tell that you kind of love the puzzle of trying to figure out, like, what can I preserve or can and then do with it? I could just see that in you, that you're enjoying coming up with all of these different ideas and applications.
Well, that's what's practical for me. I mean, it's not really practical to just have the jars on the shelf. I want to see.
Oop. Did we lose her for a second?
For a second, I was like, oh no, is that my computer? Oh, I think, Kathy, did we get you back? Oh.
I'm here.
You're back. So keep going. I'm sorry. There was a little glitch in the system.
You paused.
In the Matrix. Eat the red pill. The red pill.
Yeah, I do love that puzzle, Renee. You're right. I love it. I like knowing that this can become that.
Now, let me just play devil's advocate for a second. You used a very interesting word. You said you used the word practical, about finding ways to use this. Now, there are some people who would say practical. Practical is just going to the supermarket and buying something or doing takeout. What is practical about this process? Why do you use that word? What does that mean to you?
Well, it meant that tonight, after kind of a crazy day and a lot of prep work and getting ready for this and about 7 million other things, I could ask my husband to go down to the basement and get a jar of black beans that I canned in February, because it had the date on the front, and just pour those black beans, make some refries. We could have burritos for dinner, lickety-split. It was all there.
That sounds like it was faster than takeout.
Much faster.
My takeout is like ordering, like I log into Grubhub and I select my food. I'm pretty amazed. Is there anything that has stumped you? Like you have tried to can or you have tried to preserve and you have not been able to?
Yes, I'm still stuck. I can't seem to figure out how to make vinegar. I've had a couple of successes, but I've had so many failures, it's embarrassing.
Wait, you know what? I missed that word. What was it that?
Vinegar.
Huh. Why is that proven? Because isn't that just like leaving wine out for like 6 months and forgetting it in the back shelf?
That's us, Renee.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest challenge, is the part where you have to have leftover wine. But it's not hard to make wine go bad, but it's hard to make it taste good when it does.
Yes, that's true. I've never been able to use that old wine and turn it into anything. What is the process there that you're going through, and what seems to be the hitch?
I need to borrow somebody's mother. The mother is what aids in fermentation. And up to now, I've just let wine sit. But people that I know have these mothers for their vinegar, and that does help mellow the process. It slows it down a little bit so that you can control the flavor.
I love that I was actually thinking you meant a real mother.
I was about to say, I could maybe ask my mother.
I got one of those.
I was like, seriously, do all mothers know how to make vinegar?
Yes, they do.
I was thinking maybe they just know old stuff.
Wow, mothers really do know everything.
Mothers know everything.
Now, can you tell us what a mother is, just for the people who, not saying myself, who don't know what that is?
It's a, oh gosh, the acronym is SCOBY, SCOBY, and I cannot exactly remember what that stands for, but it looks like a jellyfish. Yeah, like a big, or like,
Oh, you know what that looks like? That looks like that tea, that big
yes,
mushroom.
like kombucha, exactly.
It
That's
looks just like that.
that's the SCOBY, yeah.
Who would have one of those? I'm looking at it right now. It's like kombucha. What?
Kombucha,
Who? What? Who? So you basically somebody has to create this, and then you
Yeah.
need to grab it.
Yeah, I need to get part of their mother, and I know a guy in upstate New York, and he has told me that he will give me some of his mother. I just have to get there.
That just sounds very bizarre.
I know.
No,
Give me your mother. Give me
that
your
can
mother.
that can be a Kickstarter campaign. Get me to
I need
bring
a
mom
mother.
home. Hey, weirder things have been funded on Kickstarter. You probably would do really well with that because people would probably think that is hilarious. Now, I want to talk about tomatoes because my dad, like, he has a garden and he would just can tomatoes, but every time I would open the jar, it did not taste good. It was disgusting.
Oh,
And I can't remember why I didn't like it, but it was just not good. Like the tomatoes tasted terrible. Like I could not put them on pasta.
oh, that's bad.
Yeah,
Well,
what do you do?
I don't know what your dad did, but I just take my hands and fill jars and a little bit of salt, a little bit of citric acid, and that's it. Nothing in there but tomatoes. And it's just as good as summer. I mean, you open them up and it tastes just like the summertime.
That's
So
amazing.
wait, I want you to break that down for me. So you're not actually cooking them on the stove in the same way that you would do raspberries. You're putting them in a jar just
No,
directly into
I
the.
do cook them. What I first do is I peel them and I take out the seeds, sort of scoop that seed and gel out. Then I crush them with my hands and heat them very briefly,
Uh-huh.
5 minutes at a boil, and then they go into jars. So it's not really a sauce. It's a crushed tomato cooked very briefly.
Do people
That
make
sounds like
mistakes with that? Like, are there things that common
The,
mistakes?
yes, the most common mistake is thinking that you can make your grandmother's spaghetti sauce and put it in a jar and it'll be safe. The things that will make tomatoes not safe are the addition of garlic, onions, peppers, mushrooms, meat, any of those things. You really can't do that easily. Uh, and that's where people make the mistake. Where if you didn't have this jar of your grandma's sauce on the shelf, you would be going to the grocery store and you'd be buying cans of Italian tomatoes or something. And so you have to think that what you want in your own pantry is that kind of idea. A jar of tomatoes, not a jar of the sauce already made. So you empty all those jars into your big pot, and that's when you throw in your peppers and your onions and whatever, and that's when you make your sauce. Does that make sense?
Is it also that you can't, I mean, you couldn't put meat in something and leave it on a shelf and expect it to, I mean, there's some, I guess, some ingredients that you just simply can't leave out, right? They have to be refrigerated.
Well, no, you can actually can meat, and you can very easily, but you need to use a pressure canner.
Ah, okay.
That's where the division really happens. So when I tell people can your tomatoes, that's a very easy canning process and doesn't require special equipment. You want to can pasta sauce with meat, then you need to have a pressure canner and a much more complicated.
Oh, did we lose her again? No. Oh, so Kathy, you just like it just kind of hit a little glitch again.
Again,
So what is the difference between the boiling water process and the pressure canning process?
boiling water canning raises the temperature inside the jar to 212 degrees, which is safe for jam, jelly, pickles, tomatoes. Pressure canning raises the temperature in the jar to 241 degrees. And at that temperature, botulism is killed. So at that temperature, you can can meat, fish, peppers, onions, things that are low acid, high pH. They need that pressure canner. So in my book, I talk about pressure canning chicken stock, which is wonderful to have on the shelf, homemade soups like turkey noodles, or turkey soup, not noodles, turkey soup, tomato soup, split pea soup on the shelf in a jar, ready to go. So no more Campbell's, no more Progresso. Just I can tuna, salmon, duck, oysters, all of that with the pressure canner.
Now, do you buy food ingredients specifically to can, or do you look at canning as, I have this many ingredients left over, I'm going to can them and save them, or both? Or
I buy food specifically to can, yes, but I go to the farmer's market with an open mind. And sometimes I'm just lured to this beautiful display of something that I think that needs to go in a jar. I'm going to want that in February.
That's cool, because sometimes, like, I went to Trader Joe's recently and I bought like this giant clam shell of blueberries, and they're already starting to go bad. And I would think, God, my first reaction always is, oh, I'll just freeze them. Like, I'll just put them in the freezer and put them in a smoothie later on. But this kind of opens up my world a little bit, that I can...
Right.
Huh. Renee, you will be trying some of my gems soon.
I want to hear about Renee's canning experience.
Okay, well, my mother grew up canning, and she will, to this day, if I said to her, hey, Mom, let's go to the market and buy something to can, she would say, absolutely not. And it's because every once in a while, they grew up on a farm, and every once in a while you would have a batch of something that would go bad for whatever reason, something wouldn't turn out. So my mother thought, first of all, that's why they invented supermarkets, so I don't have to be on a farm canning anymore. But then she always had this fear of botulism or something going bad. So she kind of instilled that fear in me of, like, you don't want to can, you don't want to can. And so I've just always been very, very reluctant to do so. However, after our last show, and you were a guest, and you kind of like were kind of coaching me through this thing, you can do it, you sent me a recipe for, it was a plum kind of compote. I hope that's the right description for it. Yeah. And so I decided I got all of the ingredients, and it was a very interesting process because I had never made anything like this before, but I put it all, followed your instructions to the T, and I put it all in this pot, and I looked at it and I thought, that doesn't really look like much at all. It just looked like a few pieces of fruit and a bunch of spices sprinkled on top, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to turn. And it was like I turned around and came back, and it was like magic. It just, the sauce turned into this beautiful, rich, deep plum sauce, and there were all these amazing spices in there. I want to say, if I remember correctly, there was something almost like a Christmas cookie type of spice, like allspice and maybe cloves. Do you remember?
It's an Asian sauce, I think. It was
that's exactly what
ginger.
It was ginger. That's right. It was ginger, but then there was something else, and maybe it was allspice. I'm not sure, but it was amazing. And I made it, the first time I made it was with a tenderloin. And so I just quickly put this in the oven, didn't do anything to the tenderloin, nothing, not salt, pepper, nothing, and cooked that, and then just put that plum compote over it, and everyone went crazy for it. And I was so scared, and it was great. It was perfect. I had absolutely no problem with it, and I thought, wow, I could really do this. This was, you said just follow the recipe, don't deviate. Do exactly what I tell you, and I thought, okay, and it was fantastic. It was
That's
fantastic.
Great.
I love it. And the first time I made it, I had just a little bit of leftovers, so the next time I doubled it. But now if I have extra plums, or people will have plum trees at work, they'll bring in extra plums, and I'm like, I just take them all, because I'm like, I know what to do with them. But that's just one of our favorite recipes now, and it's such an easy thing to do. And you throw a tenderloin in the oven, and that cooks in like 20 minutes, right? A tenderloin, 16, 18, 20 minutes, depending on how big it is. And then you put the sauce on top of it, and it's like you've been slaving away for hours.
I agree, and that's why I love having things like that on the shelf. My mother used to call it chicken yet again. That's what she would say we were having for dinner. And so I feel like if we're going to have chicken yet again, I can pull something off the shelf and make it a little more interesting.
Right. Well, it definitely makes it feel a little more luxurious, and there's definitely a pride factor to being able to be like, oh, you like that sauce? Yeah, I made that.
Totally.
I love how, Renee, you seem so like sweet and innocent, and then you're like, that's my sauce. That's my sauce. Now, I was talking to you about my dad's can, and I think what he did was he put onions in there or something. He did exactly what you said. Now, if you see, and I also think when I opened it up, too, I think there was a little bit of rust, or there was a little bit of something, like, on the can. How do you know, like, when you see that stuff? What is the visual cue that somebody can look at a can and say, do not eat that?
Well, unfortunately, there isn't a visual cue for the most dangerous foodborne illnesses. But in canning, those flat lids, when you have a successful seal, they pull down and they make this sort of plonking noise. And that canners love to listen for that noise because that means that the seal is taken. And if you don't hear that sound when you open the jar, then don't eat it. That's a good start. But I would say that my book has all through it, there are pages that are just troubleshooting pages that are going to help you know when things are going to go wrong, what it looks like, what it might look like, how to keep things from going wrong. And I have to say that I see a lot of products on the shelves at restaurants where chefs have taken up canning that to me look really questionable. And so there are just a few rules, like onions, garlic, peppers. Don't play around with those. Those are low-acid foods, and they don't have any business in your basic canning if you don't know what you're doing.
Wow. We have a question from Twitter. I'm sorry, I got so engrossed in the conversation. I probably should have been paying a little closer attention to Twitter, because Francois Villeneuve, thank you so much for tuning in. We missed you.
We did.
Has a question, and a question came in a few minutes ago, and I missed it. Okay, but we're going to catch up now. She says, what should I be preserving in November? And I think that that's one of the interesting things about your book, Cathy, is it's not just the tried and true, it's summer peaches, it's year-round. So talk a little bit about that. What should you be preserving in November and beyond?
Well, right now I am doing pear preserves, and I'm making cranberry for Thanksgiving. I'm also looking at, fruit and vegetables, meats and fish have their seasons as well. And I like to preserve duck. I do a duck confit, and so this is the time of year when a lot of ducks are available, so that is a good thing. Oysters are now available, so I will be starting to smoke oysters very soon. And during the winter is when I make soups and stews, when I can dried beans. And, man, there's nothing like being able to just open a can of beans. And I'll do a lot of work with dairy. I like to play with cheeses in the wintertime.
Oh, that sounds good. Now, something like oysters, that gets into the pressure canning, if I understood correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But it took me almost 35 tries to get the recipe for smoked oysters in the book. They're really delicious. I have a serious fondness and some childhood memories of eating smoked oysters, and there's a certain kind of molasses flavor that took me a long time to balance, and I'm very proud of that recipe. So I can't wait to start making that.
That's dedication, 35 times.
A lot of bad oysters. Bad, but they weren't as good as I wanted them to be.
You know what I like about that, just what you just said, is that you just didn't find a recipe that was good enough. You found the recipe that you remembered or that you liked. I thought that's very cool. yeah, when people are looking, they're looking on your website for recipes, they're looking online, they're looking in other cookbooks. How can people tell what is a good recipe for canning by looking at it? Are there some?
Well, the answer is to go to her website and find the recipe there, right?
That's true.
Or my book.
or a new book.
There in the canning community, people talk about, if you want to be safe, you want to use tried and true recipes. That's the big thing. T&T, tried and true. But then the question is, how do you know what's tried and true? And it's hard. There are a lot of people out there putting out a lot of canning recipes. There is a website run by the University of Georgia called the National Center for Home Food Preservation, so NCHFP. And that is sort of straight recipes and information about safety in canning. And I would say that above all, that is the resource, the sort of government-approved resource for what to do with all kinds of food. But I prefer they found that all from my book.
Where can people get your book?
Amazon, of course, hopefully bookstores around the country. My wonderful friends all around the country have been emailing me photos of my book in different bookstores, which is really nice. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
Are they using a hashtag to be able to
Practical Pantry.
So those of you who are watching at home, if you look for the hashtag Practical Pantry, you'll be able to see some of those pictures. I'll try to find some of those photos and we'll link to them on the Google event page as well. That's very cool. Now, pickles. Pickles seem to be like the obvious thing to can. Do you have any advice for people who are thinking about doing that?
Well, you can pickle anything, as they know in Portland, right? Portlandia. I can pickle that. You want to make sure that you use non-chlorinated water. So if your water is heavily chlorinated or you can smell anything like chemicals in it, leave it out on the counter overnight and those gases will disperse. Chlorinated water can turn your pickles kind of funky, so make sure that you let your water sit out or use bottled water. Also, don't use iodized salt. You want to use kosher salt or sea salt. That iodine will leave a metallic flavor in your pickles.
Wow, that is interesting. I did not know that. So you have to use, you said kosher salt or sea salt?
Yes.
As opposed to just the regular table Morton salt?
Yeah, you don't want to use table salt.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
Do most home cooks try to use table salt?
I think that that's happened. I taught a class once where I taught a lacto-fermented pickle, which is just salt, water, and cucumbers. That's all that you need. And one of my clients went home and made it immediately with Morton's table salt with the iodine in it and tap water full of chlorine. She called me the next day. She said, I don't know what I did. These are terrible. So we, went back through it, and it was just that ruined it.
I could just hear that conversation. It's like, what water did you use? Check. That would be my story.
And then what kind of salt did you use? Yeah.
That would be
like you wonder how you can mess it up. It's only 3 items, right? Water, salt, cucumbers. Where did I go wrong?
She's like, oh, I forgot the cucumbers. Do you have a preference of where you find ingredients? I mean, would you say farmers markets are the best place to find fresh ingredients? Not
only that, but if you really get to know your growers. My growers they know me. They know that I can. They celebrate their successful crops with me and say, I've got 30 extra pounds of peppers, can you use them? Or, my raspberries need to be picked, can you use them? And they do great things for me. They help me out a lot. And then when their crops fail for whatever reason, the tomato blight 3 years ago, we all were sad together, So it's nice to know your growers. It makes a difference.
Renee, when you go to your farmer's market, do you know your growers?
I have to say that I do not. There are a handful of people that I know by sight, and we wave to each other, and we're friendly in that way. But in terms of really knowing your growers, I don't. But I think that that's something that would be great to actually get a little more involved. I've been trying to get to know. I have a thing about cage-free eggs, and I will not buy eggs unless they're cage-free. And so I've had this idea of trying to get involved a little more with farmers and just making sure that the eggs that I'm buying are, from free-range chickens and so forth. And so maybe this will be a good inspiration to try to get to know farmers a little more and what's really going on with them. Because it's wonderful to be that close to the food that we're eating. And Cathy, you were kind of ahead of the game on all of this kind of farm to table stuff. Do you kind of feel like a lot of people are like playing catch up?
Well, for me, I was just trying to build content for my blog. Really. So I was at the farmer's market, and I'd say, can I come visit you at your farm? And so I would go out to the farm, and I'd walk around. I went to one place right before Thanksgiving once and met all the turkeys. And I remember the guy filling my pockets with warm turkey eggs as we walked across these fields. Really some great experiences. And I encourage everybody to try at least to visit one farm and see what it's really like. These people work so hard, and then you see the other people at the farmer's market who think, oh, those carrots have dirt on them. I don't know if I want to buy those. It makes me very sad. You need to visit farmers and see how hard they work and how proud they are of what they're doing.
Or they're begrudging of a certain price on things.
Right.
I feel like cage-free eggs are just one example. I mean, I'm sometimes paying twice as much as the supermarket for that, mm-hmm. But that is because farmers have to work so much harder to give that land over to chickens and to really harvest it in a completely different and humane way. And I'm prepared to pay for that. And same thing at the farmer's market. Sometimes you go to the farmer's market and things are cheaper than you would find at the regular market. But sometimes you go and it's a little more expensive. And that's because of the work that really went into it. And I feel like we shouldn't begrudge those people that little bit of money. And often we're talking like $1 more or $1.50. Right. And while I know that not everybody has the luxury of being able to afford that, if we, it's like basically a Starbucks coffee, right?
Yes. So, I just think that I would rather pay more for the meat that I eat and eat less of it than... Right. Just look for the cheapest way. I remember talking to one farmer who raised pigs years ago, and it was before I took some butchery classes, and I've been, I've done some charcuterie, and I've thought a lot about whole animal consumption. And this farmer said to me, if only I could raise pigs that just had bellies and tenderloins. But here I've got the shoulders to sell. And the hams, they can never do anything with hams. They have to find someone who will cure that ham because nobody will buy it.
Why is that? Because we seem to like ham and cheese sandwiches. Why is that?
Well, basically because you have to learn to salt and cure and hang something somewhere for 12 to 18 months before you can enjoy it. I think that's why, Americans just don't know what to do with a ham. I had a friend...
I was thinking of like the ham that you already buy at the store that's already cooked. So I'm cutting right to that process.
Right, and it takes a long time to get there. I had a friend here in D.C. who decided to cure a ham at home, and the only place he could find in his house that had the right conditions was up toward the ceiling of the foyer in his front hall. So unless you knew and looked up, and it hung there for months, for a year, I think, before he took it down. So there aren't many people who will do that.
But you think about something like that, or prosciutto, or something that just, it takes time. And then people are like, why would that be, $20 a pound at the market? And it's like, well, because this took a year to make.
Yeah.
If not longer, right? Some of those aged...
First you have to raise the pig for a year or more. Right. And then you have to take, they have 2 back legs, so you have 2 hands. And then you have to hang or cure them for a year or more.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe that's a good segue into charcuterie. Tell us a little bit about what is that process like?
Oh,
How do
well,
you do that?
let's start with bacon. Everybody's favorite, bacon. Basically takes 7 days to make it. You don't need to have a smokehouse. You don't need to have anything special. You just need a zip bag and pork belly. And it cures in 7 days, and then you roast it at a low temperature, and you have bacon. I, if you make your own bacon, it is such a gateway. It is the gateway drug. You will never go back. It's such an amazing thing. It's true. Really, I have not purchased store-bought bacon or even farmer's market bacon in years. It's so much better.
Okay, now I've never made my own bacon, but you said when you roast it, is it sliced like regular, we think of regular bacon, or when you say roast it, what does that mean?
Well, you get a hunk of pork belly. You know, I usually work with 2.5 or 3 pounds at a time, and that goes into a Ziploc bag with salt and sugar and spices. Mine has coffee and bourbon and maple syrup.
I'm liking it already.
Yeah, you had me at bourbon. You had me at bourbon.
And then 7 days, and then you take it out of the cure, that salt cure, and you put it in the oven at about 200 degrees, 225 at the highest, and you roast it until the internal temperature is 150. So you're barely cooking it. You don't want the fat to melt, right, because the fat is the good part of the bacon. And so then you take that big hunk out of the oven, chill it, and slice it, and then you got bacon.
Now, is your kitchen decked out with like a really fancy slicer? And
No, but boy, did I want one today. I was just thinking, I need to ask Santa to get me a big slice. I have a very sharp knife.
You, of all people, need one.
I do.
I think bacon has the best PR agency working for them because everyone is like, I love bacon, but if you're like, hey, do you want to eat some pork belly? They'd be like, what? I'm not sure about that.
No, that's not true. There's many LA high-end restaurants where if you offered pork belly, you'd have like a stampede of people trying to get to the line.
Oh, Cathy, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a Negroni made with a local gin with the worst name ever. Yeah, absolutely. It is called VIR Gin. Bird Gin. Yeah.
The gin.
But it's very delicious.
And it's local. It's made like in or around DC.
It's made outside DC in a small town in Virginia.
I love that.
Renee, what are you drinking?
What did I drink?
Yeah.
I had vodka on the rocks, and I still have some olives at the bottom.
I love how you actually decided to put little olives in it.
That's the best part. That's the best part.
It's berries, Renee.
Ooh, I like that. I fell in love with the Manhattan, and I really think that I love it because it's that little cherry at the bottom. And I've noticed that many places where if you order it out, instead of just the traditional maraschino cherry, it's some amazing type of cherry. I have not figured out a way to duplicate it. Do you know what I'm talking about, Cathy?
Yes, it happens to be in my book.
All right. I'm going to find that out. I'll be toasting you with my Manhattan.
Yes, exactly.
I've been loving the old-fashioned, but it has too much sugar that it gives me like a hangover within like 20 minutes of drinking it. But it's so delicious. I went with a gin and tonic tonight, but there's no more ice. It actually completely melted. But I'm still enjoying it.
Oh, wait, do we catch that ring?
Oh.
All right.
Did you see her flash that like, oh, look at my
tonic. It's my gin and tonic. No, just kidding. Just kidding. It's very funny, Renee. You're hilarious.
That's why you have me here for the yucks, Babette.
Yucky. So we have about 5 minutes left of the show. So if you have any questions, make sure you're on Twitter or on the Google Plus page. Actually, I think the gin and tonic is starting to affect me because all of a sudden, as I'm moving, I'm like slowly moving this way. Well, I'm very inspired to try my hand at a raspberry jam
Do
soon.
it.
So I think I might have to do that as like holiday gifts. Now, I mean, is raspberry jam, is that gluten-free? Is that
Yes, it is.
okay? I may have to, for my new sister-in-law, I may have to get her some jam. It might be kind of cool to be like, I made this. I mean, usually we do like a wine thing where we give like 12 bottles of wine and we put a sticker on it and it'll say something ridiculous like, who would you rather do? You know, it'd be like, you know, so-and-so with such and such or such and such with so-and-so. You know, like some weird stuff. But I think the jam may be a total departure. They may be like, she's completely lost her mind and
Look, she got married and now she's making jam.
I know. Exactly. Renee, what are you going to try for the first time?
You know what? I'm going to go with 2 recipes. I want to try that bacon recipe, and I want to try that cherry recipe. You know, and not because I love Manhattans, but because I want to, you know, research and like make sure the recipe works. That's why I want to do it. So
okay, tell me about the cherries. So what's the process of the cherries? Is it that you put it with something, or is it just the cherry stuff?
They actually are brined in salt first, and then after they're plumped with the salt, then they're marinated in maraschino liqueur. And it's delicious. And sometimes, on half of them, I put a chipotle chili in.
Oh, you are rocking my Manhattan. I love it. I love it.
Those are really fun. They're really fun when they have that little smoky zing.
I have. There's one more question. Francois had another question on Twitter. How come commercial pickles always have coloring? Is there a way to retain the color without it when you're pickling at home?
Yes. I don't use any coloring, and they don't look funny. I think that in commercial applications, they have to cook the cucumbers to such a high temperature that they use coloring to keep them from fading. But you don't have to do that at home.
And so if you do them at home, they'll still have that more of a vibrant green color to them?
Yeah, they look like a dill pickle. You know, they're not bright green, but they're green. Yeah, a lot of pickling recipes for bread and butter pickles and some Middle Eastern pickles use turmeric to add some yellow back in, so that if the cucumber gets kind of that gray color, the turmeric will add some more yellow. So I think that's done more frequently than anything else.
I like that, and I'm partial to those bread and butter pickles, like the sweet and sour pickles.
Uh-huh.
I like those.
I've never heard of them described as bread and butter pickles.
Oh, that's a classic kind.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I do want to give a shout out to the folks on Google+. I want to just read down the list. Daniela, Peaceful Cooking, Liliana, Toma, Sabar Ahmed, I think is that how you say your name? Dennis Barrow, Christine Spurl, Jim Best, Kitchen Shaman, Nichelle Stevens, Larry Fournier. Larry, I never say your name right. Deb Healing. Larry's amazing. He has awesome cooking shows on Google+. Make sure you check him out. Carol White, Inuijin, Francois Villeneuve. I always say that name wrong too. Francois, we love you, of course.
I love that name.
Sharon McGrath. I know it sounds like, I feel like I'm smarter when I say it. Sharon McGrath, Anita, Ariane, Brooks Walker. Brooks has always chimed into our shows.
Walker rules.
Yes. Shop Baker Nook also checked in as well. So I want to say hi to everyone. We're so glad you watched. Next week we're going to have a chocolate and wine pairing show. Scharfenberger is our sponsor, and we're super delighted. Not only do we have an expert that's going to walk us through the process of chocolate and wine pairing. So, Cathy, you may want to come back for that. We also have three bloggers. We have three top bloggers who are going to be coming in. One is Elise Bowers from SimplyRecipes.com. So she's going to be fantastic. Yeah, no, it's going to be super cool. Now, that's next week, so make sure you guys tune in for that. But then, Cathy, what is on your agenda? Because we only have about 2 minutes left of the show. Because the book just launched, so where will you be next?
Well, you can find all my events on my website, mrswheelbarrow.com. I leave Monday, I'm in Toronto. Tuesday through Thursday, I'm in New York. Then Friday through the following Wednesday, I'm in San Francisco. Then I'm off to Seattle. Come back, I'll be in New England in December. And I have quite a few events in D.C.
You know, we did a Tech Munch in Toronto and New York. So we've done Tech Munches in New York for like 5 years, but Toronto as well. If you need any contacts for some people or some friends or food media, you let us know, because we can definitely help you out with that as well. And also in New York, too. We have a huge, there's an amazing food community there. I mean, it's probably one of the best. I will be
at the 92nd Street Y next Thursday at noon doing a tasting and talk. I'll be in conversation with Charlotte Druckman, who is a terrific food writer and a good friend.
Awesome. Well, Renee, you got any last words, Renee?
I am looking forward to doing some bacon, and Cathy, I will be in touch.
Let me know how it goes, Renee. Thanks.
I will.
Awesome, guys.
Thank you so much.
Cathy, thank you so much for joining us again, and we hope you come back. Will you come back again?
You bet. It was
maybe
really fun.
Maybe in the summer, maybe like a summertime farmers market thing. And also, that we should have a challenge where Renee and I have to go out and meet one farmer.
Yes, meet one farmer.
Renee, we can do that together.
Cathy.
Yeah, we can do it together, Renee. Actually, that'd be really funny. Kitchen Party on the road. If you own a farm and would like Renee and I to come, let us know. We will make that happen. All right, wonderful, guys. If you guys are interested in any of our, want to see any of the episodes that have happened on Kitchen Party, go to YouTube and look up the username BakeSpace TV. There you'll find all of our videos. Thank you, Renee, for being my wonderful co-host for the third season in a row. This is going to be an amazing season, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Cathy, thank you.
Bye-bye. Nice to see you both.